we're both probably just at that particular time in our career where we were looking for something different, something where we had probably more creative control beyond, in my case anyway, particularly just writing. I'd been script writing for about 6 years full time.
We've always really enjoyed working together, and it felt for me, it felt like, well, why not? Why not form a company? Why not do this ourselves? Because we could, you know. And it was scary, but I think we knew we could do it.
Donna and I had been working together on Insider's Guide television series, and you know, it's kind of rare when you find someone you can work that well with. I think the longer you work in this industry, the more you realise when you really click with someone and you work well creatively but also personally, you grab that person.
David's story had always stood out for me through that whole time that he was unjustly jailed, and there was just so much injustice with that. And I think it was a forgotten story too, because of who he was. You know, he wasn't the perfect middle-class man, and I think for me there'd always been this feeling of, oh, it doesn't really matter. You know, he'd probably done something else if he'd not done that. And the injustice of that always irked me. So for that reason, I liked the story of David Doherty, and you were really taken by the story of the people who had worked to save him.
Yeah, the lawyer, the journalist and the scientist, which was actually the same triumvirate as there was with the Arthur Allen Thomas case, wasn't it? I thought that was quite an interesting idea, that, and a slightly sad idea, that it takes these middle-class white professionals to get involved in a case like that, to actually advance it, because really David had exhausted whatever he could achieve by himself. And I think we both felt just moved and annoyed and exercised by a whole lot of issues at the heart of that.
That was the first drama that we did that was based on a real story, and we were aware all the time of the responsibility of that. And it was rewarding to know that at the end David himself was so pleased that it was done. And even through the process, he was incredibly brave through the process of, you know, having his story told, given, you know, what had happened to him and how he'd been done over so seriously by so many people. I think it showed an extraordinary trust, you know, and that we were very conscious of that through the whole process.
The main casting was Cohen Holloway, and that in many ways was the easiest and yet the most surprising, probably. That was the one that we thought would be very hard, and we had a huge number of young Māori actors auditioned for that, and we had an embarrassment of riches, and yet there was Peter Berger was the director on that, and between Peter, Donna, myself and Tina Cleary, the casting director, I don't think any of us had any doubts, really. As soon as we saw Cohen's audition, it just blew us all away. And I have to say, I don't think that's ever happened since. I don't think we've ever cast any lead as easily as we did with that one. And it was completely surprising. Cohen was just known as a comedian. You know, nobody knew he could pull that out.
He was extraordinary. Fantastic. So much so that David Doherty's mother actually asked for photos of Cohen for her wall because she was so taken with him, that's quite something. I think he did an amazing job. It was just such the way he internalised the character in the script, and we couldn't have asked for more. You know, he was wonderful.
We worked really carefully looking at it and trying not to in any way be gratuitous about the crime, but you also had to present it as being as heinous as it was, so that everyone understood this child went through this terrible ordeal. So that was probably, for me, my memory, that was one of the hardest things for us to just work through, and we just spent a lot of time.
Yeah, I think for me it was based on real people, and that was something we were always conscious of. At the same time, we're dramatists, and so we wanted to tell the best story we could, and sometimes there was an uncomfortable connection between those two. we both individually had come up with that idea, or had heard the story. And then I remember the day we were in editing on UPI until Proven Innocent,
Avid.
and in the Avid suite, and Paula started to tell me the story, and the way she told me the story, not knowing that I knew it, was quite different from the story. Had another whole added perspective, and she told the story so passionately that I got, even see now, I've got goosebumps coming up in my arms. And it's the goosebump moment. And we've been in that place a couple of times where we go, oh, goosebumps, and we know then
It must be good.
It's got to be good.
But it was a really hard production to get up because it's period, it's got a train crash. It had a cricket match with 26,000 people at it in South Africa. I mean, it just seemed insurmountable, some of the production issues. So the biggest challenge with that was coming up with ways in which it could possibly be done in a New Zealand television budget.
With Pirates, there was just a sense of, oh wow, we could do something that's fun, and it was great.
It was a romp. It was and it was a hell of a shoot too. It was all the drama was shot in 2 weeks. Charlie Haskell was indefatigable, really. I mean, what he managed to pull off in 2 weeks of a drama shoot was extraordinary.
Rock and roll.
It was a rock and roll shoot.
The Pirates love it, and they're such a great bunch of guys. They were a fantastic bunch of guys. So I think you just trust yourself.
And the story existed. I mean, there was the Shoestring Pirates, the book that Adrian Blackburn had written, which told the story. And he'd been involved in it at the time, and they had all trusted him with their story, and that book had been around for a long time. So that was our basis for the story. We just decided where to begin it and end it. We could see there was a natural drama arc. And then we did the documentary interviews first. So we always knew that if something came up in the interviews that we weren't expecting, we could still weave that into our drama shoot later. And they were, the interviews were great because, we got to know so many little details and we got to know the guys and they were so behind it. They were really keen to do it and to have it happen. I think so many people had tried to make that film over the years. They couldn't quite believe it was really happening.
They probably didn't believe it was really happening.
Well, they enjoyed being in front of the camera, most of them. Yeah. It's one of those stories where I think a lot of people have an idea about conscientious objectors were locked up in prison during the war, but when Donna first told me that these 14 were sent to the front, sent to France, and they tried to make them fight in order to turn them, I couldn't quite conceive of how you could come up with such a stupid idea, let alone then see it through. And it just seems so absurd, and it is absurd. And that's really where the story kicks in many ways, is not just this conflict of interest between the authorities and the individuals, but actually just how extreme the authorities became in trying to win that stupid little personal battle. Production-wise, creating World War One, in Auckland, during summer, during a drought. Creating sort of, the muddy, slushy, disgusting battlefields of France was a huge logistical nightmare, really, as they say, and it was. It was incredibly hard work, and our art department just went all out, really. We were pumping water like crazy into these huge trenches and trying to keep everybody wet and muddy. And for costume, it was horrendous because their uniforms, you can only get them wet once, then they have to be dried off, then they have to be wet again. So all of that, bombs and things going off, guns. Creating war's really expensive and really difficult, even for a film producer.